Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and I hope all of you are having a great Tuesday, a great start to your week, and of course, I want to really drive this one home because if you are looking for a brand new episode of Computer America tomorrow, July 4th, Wednesday, then you will be sorely out of luck. We will, of course, be playing one of our best of programs. We'll pick from, whichever one we feel you should hear again. But with that being said, we of course will, we will not be on, and you will have a best of Computer America, and then we'll be back, probably full of ribs on Thursday. So all that being said, again, just to be clear, no live show on July 4th. But we do have a live show today, and we have a great live show today because we have the one, the only, Mr. Cory Galliher, as we are going to, and he's from Popzara, the Well-Read Mage, writes for a number of publications, and of course is just an all-around gaming aficionado and very, very knowledgeable. Love having him on to talk about everything gaming. So, with that being said, today is Gamer Tuesday, and so a couple things. The show notes at computeramerica.com, that's where you'll find everything and anything for today's show. So, be that the any links you want to check out, any videos that we show, any trailers that we talk about, all that will be in one place so that if you're busy, if your hands are tied, or if you're just not watching the video portion, you can find everything right there in one convenient place. Also, be sure to check out, the social media contest brought to you by Logitech, and you can also check out the live video stream brought to you by OWC. So, with all that being said, let's go ahead and, why don't we go ahead and get started? So, again, Cory Galliher, he's been on the show before a number of times. He just helped us a couple of weeks ago with our E3 coverage, talking everything that happened out there. But the gaming news continues to grow, so welcome him once again, Cory. Cory, thanks for coming on the program.
Hey, Ben, thanks for having me. It's great to be here as always.
Yeah, so this is going to be a lot of fun, and we have tons and tons of stuff. So last time you were on, we didn't even get to all the keynotes. It was a very hectic time. We really breezed through a lot, and I think today it's going to be a little bit more relaxed because we don't have thousands upon thousands of man hours of work to kind of cover in the span of a single hour. So before we get started, let's give people your credentials. What are you up to lately? We know, of course, you work over with Nathan over at Popzara, but what do you do during the day?
So during the day, I'm a writer. I work with the government. Aside from that, as you mentioned, I work with Nathan over at Popzara. I'm the senior games editor over there. I attend things like E3 in LA, CES in Las Vegas, cover what there is to cover, come back and tell you guys about it.
Yeah, and we love that you do. So let's go ahead and get started with with our first story, and we have a number here. I'll let you go ahead and choose the first one as our guest. Which one kind of really jumped out to you?
Well, here's one that really gets my attention. I think it's going to get a lot of people's attention. I want to talk about GameStop.
GameStop. That is
Yes.
a sentence people haven't said for years. What?
Yeah, I don't really think anybody wants to talk about GameStop unless they're talking about how they don't want to go to GameStop, which, as you might expect, that's not a good thing, because we are seeing that GameStop is not doing so great lately.
And that's, honestly, I am surprised that they are still around for as long as they have been, because when digital sales first started taking off, and I remember clearly on this program when a number of games were the first ones to be sold online, everyone was saying the death of GameStop. And yet, be that through a couple of practices that they do that people get really ticked at. But, GameStop is still around, and I think that amazes people more than the fact that they're not doing well.
Right, and when I say that GameStop's not doing well, I'm not necessarily referring to the idea that they're not selling games, because that's not necessarily true. The issue is that GameStop has diversified a lot. If you go into a GameStop these days, you're not just going to see video games. You're going to see shirts. You're going to see merch. When I say they're not doing well in particular, we're talking about their technology side of things too, referring to, say, Spring Mobile, Simply Mac, things like that, selling things that aren't necessarily games.
So, and things aren't necessarily games. That weren't there other stores that kind of fell into that? Like, why did they kind of gravitate that way? Was it just that selling games isn't a profitable strategy now that we do have, digital downloads, pre-ordering, things like that? Because I remember for a while, GameStop's true claim to fame was that they had enough retail space that they commanded such a presence that certain, let's say certain Call of Duty games, you'd start out and you pre-order from GameStop exclusively, and you'd get a special gun that you wouldn't unlock until much, much later if you didn't pre-order. GameStop used to be about pre-ordering and, that kind of thing. Do you think it's just the logistics of games, or, what kind of brought on their shift in strategy?
Well, I'm no sales analyst myself, but if I had to pinpoint something that I really think is causing the problem, you mentioned we talked about diversification, about the fact that they're selling things that are not necessarily games. They're selling merch, they're selling mobile phones, et cetera, et cetera. The reason they would do that, if you ask me, would be because we're starting to see a big shift toward digital distribution of games as kind of a mainstream thing. As in, when a new game comes out, I no longer think of having to go to GameStop as the first place to pick that thing up. I think to myself, you know what? I'll go on the PlayStation Store. I'll go on the Microsoft Store. I'll go on Steam. I'll get things from the comfort of my home. I'll probably get them faster than I would if I had to drive out. I won't have to deal with any upselling tactics like pre-orders or warranties or what have you. Mm-hmm. I'll probably know what I want because we're generally seeing a lot of push toward marketing of games toward people that will like those games. Especially on Steam. Steam is big for this. If you play a lot of games of, say, the action RPG genre on Steam, Steam will know you like action RPGs. They will market those games towards you. Discoverability becomes less of an issue as a result. Most of our stores these days do that. So generally speaking, we're seeing GameStop, I think, try to wriggle out of only being a game store, because if they keep doing that, when we almost inevitably see physical game releases no longer as a thing, they're going to be in deep trouble. Deep trouble as in shutting down, closing other stores, deep trouble.
Yeah, no, and the deepest trouble that a store like that can get into. And I guess the other part of it, how much of it do you think has to do with the fact that back in GameStop's heyday, you went out and you bought an N64 cartridge. You bought an Xbox, not Xbox One, but just an Xbox CD. You bought a game that was, as you said, physical, but even physical copies nowadays are kind of assigned to your account. It's still you can go out and you can buy the game, but still all of everything's still tied to, I guess, kind of you, and it's very, very hard or very, very rare that you can just give a friend a game. It's just not something you can do. How much of GameStop's, recent figures do you think is the fact that it's not so easy to sell them games, which they can then sell pre-owned games back to people? Because I don't know if developers are exactly excited at the prospect of 2, 3, 4, 5 people all playing their game after only one person spent $60 that goes to them.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I mean, we know for a fact that publishers and developers weren't very fond of this back, I want to say maybe 6, 7 years ago, when we saw the concept of the online pass, which is basically a code that came with a new game that you'd have to input into your system to play that game online. Naturally, if you had bought the game used, you wouldn't have access to that code. You couldn't play online. So you'd have to drop another, $10, $15 to get an online code and play your game online if you bought it used, which in theory would have helped make up for the money that the publisher had lost because you bought the game used. Do I think that this plays a significant role in what's happened to GameStop now? I'm inclined to say probably not, honestly. I mean, there was a lot of backlash against it back when it was a thing, but I don't believe we've ever actually seen any sort of backlash from the gamer community having much of an effect on sales or revenue. I really think it comes down to, yeah, I know.
Just the way you said that, it's like, social outrage among a very select group of people really didn't have much of an effect. Like, gamers love to get angry, but, time and time again, you make the point that even if people take to the internet and they're angry, gamers aren't just the people who talk about it. Gamers are such a large market.
Everyone. Gamers are everyone. And again, like you said, it's a point that I make time and time and time again because it's really important to keep in mind when you're talking about these things. When we're talking about gamers, as in people who buy and play video games, it's no longer your pocket protector wearing, male virgin nerds. That's not the case anymore. If it ever was the case. It's everybody. So the people who get angry about something like an online pass, that's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percentage of the people who are actually buying and playing these games. Everybody else, they buy the game used. Oh no, I want to play online. Need this pass. Okay, I bought the pass. Boom, done. Never think about it again. Right. So from that perspective, no, I don't really think it had much of an impact. Okay. As I mentioned, what I do think has a lot of an impact is the fact that soon. I mean, what's GameStop going to sell? If there's no physical games, are they going to sell game codes in boxes? I mean, to some extent, some games actually do that. But at that point, why do you need to go to GameStop? Maybe if you want some Think Geek merchandise. Maybe if you want a phone. But we're not really seeing people do that in the quantities necessary to keep GameStop alive.
And I think the key to that is not to the extent that GameStop is currently, because GameStop used to be, even in my town, I didn't grow up in a small town by any means, but we had, 2, 3, 4 GameStops within a couple of miles radius of us. There were, GameStops as much as there were Best Buys. I'm sorry, not Best Buys, Blockbusters. There we go. And I think the comparison between Blockbuster and GameStop is, going to kind of happen because while Blockbuster went away, you'd be surprised at how brisk business is when it comes to VHS or DVD or whatever rentals, like not just Redbox, but like physical stores. They're not as common as they used to be. There's probably 1 or 2 per town that still get, those people who just can't live without a DVD rental storefront, but they're never going to be the extent to which they were, 10 years ago. Do you think there's any chance of that where, gone by the wayside is the Blockbuster of video games, and it becomes more of a franchise where people buy into it, and the community can only support a fraction of what they can support now, because obviously what they're doing now, not sustainable.
Yeah, I think Blockbuster is a great comparison. Blockbuster was completely destroyed by the existence of Netflix and later Hulu and so on and so forth. Basically things that offered you the same exact experience in a more convenient and cheaper fashion. I don't have to pay late fees to Netflix. I don't have to deal with clerks who might be annoying at Netflix. I don't have to drive out to Netflix, et cetera, et cetera. So from that perspective, I really think there will be no GameStop as we know it within maybe a decade, probably sooner.
GameStop as we know it, but there are still going to be storefronts that sell video games. I think that's always going to be around. It's not going to be as prevalent. It's not going to be the empire that GameStop had built. And GameStop, I'm wondering if there's any part of their business that isn't, of course, replaced by digital sales, as we've been talking about, but also that isn't kind of catered to by kind of the internet, because even collectibles or merchandise, I mean, just naming Blizzard off the top of my head because I was just playing their game, but even Blizzard, they're starting to sell their merchandise through their own official game kind of launcher, their game app. I'm sure Origin has a merchandise shop as well. Like, you can do everything at GameStop, now you can do it online, and that's trouble for GameStop.
right. That pretty much sums it up. That is trouble for GameStop, and I don't see them really coming back from it.
So, yep, and as I say here, once consoles go completely digital, the concept of used games and GameStop's main cash cow will all but disappear. I'm just trying to think when that's going to actually happen. Obviously, Microsoft announced a little while ago that all Xbox exclusives will also be now Xbox and PC, and they will all be available for digital download, digital streaming, what have you. I don't know, how much longer do you think you give GameStop? Because we give these dire projections, and even though there are trends, and obviously GameStop is trending downwards, how long do you kind of give GameStop?
I would, honestly, it's really hard to make an estimate like this, but we've seen a lot of progress toward this whole digital only world where we don't really have physical game releases anymore. I would guess maybe being conservative 5 years.
5 years.
Possibly 5 years. I would say maybe 10 years if I'm being a little bit generous.
Right.
Between 5 and 10 years. Services like GameFly are also going to be impacted by this because obviously if there's no more physical games, well, you can't exactly rent them, right? And I think when something like this happens, where we're starting to see kind of the decline of a long-standing business, what you really want if you're in charge of GameStop is to have built a brand that people know and love. And I will say with a fair degree of certainty that while a lot of people knew GameStop, I can't think of many people who loved it.
They were very predatory, and in this article that you linked here, which we have a link in the show notes, but they were very predatory when it came to selling games that they had just sold you. If they were opened, if they were a couple weeks past, that prime selling window when it was considered quote unquote new, many people have complained, and it's become its own meme, that you pay $60 for a game up front, you return it a week later, and they're going to offer you $2 and a piece of bubblegum. And, of course, they're going to turn around and try to sell it for $55. Things like that. So obviously they've made people, or they've made a small subset of gamers mad. I mean, the reason that, and not Blockbuster, but Best Buy, we thought that with not just digital sales of, kind of physical goods, but we thought that Best Buy was going to go away. They did a lot of restructuring. They closed a lot of stores, and they started selling floor space to particular companies. But Best Buy was able to turn that trend at least a little bit around, where if people wanted to buy, they at least price matched. They said that, hey, you can walk out the door with it and have it today instead of in 2 days. They started being kind of the quote unquote tech showroom. Is there any chance of GameStop being that? Is there any need for video games or VR or anything, kind of video game related? Is there any need for a showroom?
We used to have a showroom. We called it a demo. The idea was that a developer or a publisher would basically set aside a section of the game. You get to play it for free, and you could tell if you like the game or not based on that. And we don't really see a lot of demos anymore, and the reason that's the case is because demos would actually tend to lower sales. You would find out that maybe you didn't like something the way you thought you would, and you wouldn't buy it as a result. So in terms of there being a showroom for games, I would say almost absolutely not. In terms of something like a showroom for VR, in as much as VR is a thing that people want to buy, which that's a question in and of itself, we've seen Best Buy doing that. And I don't think that GameStop could do the same thing and expect to survive as a result. Best Buy as a comparison is interesting too, because it was already a little bit diversified. It had car equipment, it had computers, it had software, it had music, it had movies, et cetera, on and on and on and on. So the loss of one of these revenue streams, or even several, because really we don't really see a lot of people buying CDs anymore, for instance, that wasn't enough to kill Best Buy. Certainly it was having some trouble for a little while there, but as you mentioned, we started seeing them sell out floor space to particular companies, which has certainly helped a lot.
Right, and I guess GameStop just won't be able to do that. So I think the writing on the wall has been there for honestly about 5 years, almost a decade. As soon as the first video game was available to download instead of just simply, or even stream instead of just simply on a CD, I think we all kind of saw this coming. So we're going to see, unfortunately, GameStop maybe go the way of Toys R Us. And yeah, there's not really too much more to that. So again, this whole article was about GameStop strategy just isn't working. Their numbers across the board are going down. And it's just a matter of, not even, and as we've kind of talked about here for the past, 15 minutes, it's kind of hard to think, and this is just, two guys talking on the radio, but it's just kind of hard to think of a way that they can turn this entire operation around. You can't float the whole thing on PUBG, helmets and things like that. So, all right, so there's that. And let's go ahead and, kind of skip on over to some of these other stories and, some of these that you have picked out here. Let's talk about this one because I play League of Legends. I definitely do enjoy the game. And I was kind of surprised. I didn't even hear about this because you'd think that the first place you would hear about Riot accidentally sending a few, quote unquote, League of Legends players' personal information, other people's, personal info. Well, you'd think you'd hear that first from Riot Games, but no, this is, Cory, you're the first one I've heard it from. So let's talk about this real quick and, just give us a quick overview. What happened here?
Well, when you play League of Legends, obviously you're going to give Riot Games, the company that runs the game, some of your personal information. And that's been, I'm certain you know, that's been a big topic lately. How much personal information are you giving companies? What do they have on you? And can you get it back? Can you stop them from having it?
GDPR,
so,
right?
Correct. That's the European thing, but yes, absolutely. Now, Riot Games now allows you to get your account info. You can request it. You can find out what you've done in the servers, your contact information, and so on and so forth, in accordance with the GDPR. Here's the problem. Traditionally, when you send in one of these requests, it's an automated system that sends you your information back in the form of, say, a zip file. However, in some cases, this was done manually, and in those cases, it was possible that you would not receive your personal information. You would receive somebody else's.
That is a bad thing, right?
That's an incredibly bad thing. There are numerous problems with that. If I get your personal information, for instance, I could, I've got your phone number. Now I can sign you up for things. I've got your email address. Now I can do horrible things under your name. God knows what else I might have. I might have your billing information. I might have your address. I'm not exactly sure what they were sending out. The point is, this is stuff that nobody but the person in question should ever have.
And of course, this was the kind of thing that GDPR was supposed to solve, was that you were able to see your data, but also you were able to make sure that the company who had your data was using it responsibly.
Yes. Clearly, sending someone else your data is not using it responsibly.
Right. It's so it's just something that obviously shouldn't happen. And this article that you have here from Kotaku, this follows the journey of one particular user who received the information from another player's account, and I guess I'm kind of happy that they were able to get back to him and say that we didn't send your information to anyone. We just accidentally sent you someone else's. Honestly, human error. Like this doesn't seem to be a hack of any kind of sort. This doesn't seem to be account compromised in any kind of way. This seems to be strictly dragging the wrong file to the wrong email and sending it to the wrong person. Like, that's kind of what I'm coming away with this. This is human error.
Sure, absolutely. And humans make all kinds of mistakes. That's the reason we tend to use automated systems if we can. The issue then becomes, if this can happen at all, how often has it happened before? When will it happen again? How will we know? I mean, Riot will say that their automated system isn't doing this. Can we trust them? Do we know that? It's numerous questions. And the GDPR has really forced us to kind of open up our minds and think about these things.
So, and this could, and I'm trying to think about the personal information that a video game company would have on you. I'm sure a lot of people would think that, hey, it's just a video game company. They're going to have your video game statistics in it. They're going to have things like that. But odds are, because, hey, they're a tech company, they will be logging a lot more than you are probably comfortable with. They will be logging when you sign on, where you sign on from, what IP address, maybe even your device specs, and things like that. So it can even show kind of behavior. If someone were to, specifically kind of target you and say, hey, this is this person, maybe they have your work schedule now because they have your gaming schedule and they know that you never play between these 8 hours. Things like that can start to become an issue. I mean, it's a little unfortunate that this is the first I'm hearing about this from an article rather than from Riot Games themselves saying, hey, we've accidentally sent, maybe the incidents were far too low. But overall, I mean, this is what the GDPR was supposed to prevent, was the unfortunate handling of personal information. Honestly, I don't know even where to even take it from there, because I'm still going to play League of Legends, I'll be honest with you. I just kind of hope that they do better, I guess.
Well, if I ever happen to receive your personal information, Ben, I will do my best not to open any credit cards in your name.
Thank you. And also, I'm sure my credit score is as low as my ELO. It's good luck with that. So, all right, so Riot Games, good luck with that. Hopefully they get the whole, because, and that's something that, maybe we've mentioned on other shows, but definitely not our gamer shows. GDPR, or the General Data Protection Regulation, that is happening over in Europe, passed by the EU, but it affects us here in America because any company that does business in the EU, they are mandating that they impose these regulations across the world. So that's why we're hearing so much about it. Even though it's EU legislation, the companies have to expand it to the US. And something that we don't mention often is just how much bending over backwards it takes to sometimes comply to this, because data, in the recent past is just kind of if you collect it, then it's yours. Congratulations. That's changing, and that's changing very, very, very rapidly. And hey, I guess it's kind of good to see as well.
Right, absolutely. And the real question isn't what we're doing about it right now. It's a trendy topic at the moment. We are thinking about our data because it's big at the moment. The question is going to be, in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, what will have happened to data protection, and will anybody still think about it? We didn't think about it before. We gave everything to Facebook and didn't blink twice.
Right. Yeah, we give everything, and not just Facebook, but dozens of other companies as well, and that they even shared it between themselves. And I'm sure that your own mother doesn't know you as well as Google does. So yeah, it's so definitely a good article there. Before we head off to break, and we're gonna head off in about a minute, but that should give us enough time to at least start the next one. And I wanted to talk about, and so I have two different articles, one from you, one from me, that kind of tie in together. And let's just get started talking about PUBG and them, or PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. The developer behind it dropped their Fortnite lawsuit. So just real quick, actually, I don't know what you can do in a minute, but just real quick, talk about this lawsuit in general. What were they alleging, and why was this lawsuit a thing?
Oh, this is an easy one. We can't talk much about it because it's still ongoing litigation, I believe. But the point is that Epic Games, creators of Fortnite, were sued by PUBG Corp, creators of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which is a very similar game to the extremely popular Fortnite, because of how similar the games were. But it appears they've dropped the suit, and we don't know why, because it's ongoing litigation, and that's pretty much the story.
Well, I mean, and everyone will be right back, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but isn't it technically not ongoing if they dropped it? Isn't it, kind of settled? But we don't know, I guess, if they settled out of court. We don't know why they kind of, if one has to pay royalties to the other now. But hey, folks, we're going to be right back with more Computer America and more Gamer Tuesday. Cory Galliher, there's the music. Right there. So everyone, we'll be right back. More Computer America, more video games, because again, Gamer Tuesday with Cory Galliher will be right back. So everyone, stay tuned, and right after these messages, we're going to continue on. So everyone, here we go.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. And by the way, if you missed any part of today's program, you can, of course, go back and listen to the podcast version of the show. It's just today's show in its entirety, rebroadcast on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, what have you. You can find it there. So we continue on with Cory Galliher, and yeah, we're talking video games and things like that. So let's see, we were just getting into this whole PUBG kind of deal where, let's see, everything, yep. So yeah, we were just getting into this PUBG where they have dropped their litigation, which I guess, not many people, kind of saw coming. But at the same time, I think a lot of people didn't, kind of didn't want PUBG to do this in the first place. Because, I'm sure as you know, it's there were a couple of games before PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. It's just PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds was really popular. Like, it became the game of choice for a lot of people. And then even beyond that, Fortnite came along, or at least Fortnite Battle Royale came along, and that became just as much more popular as PlayerUnknown's Battleground was. Like, Fortnite is still... I'm sure that you see kids, ages 8 to 13 doing these crazy dances, and I'm sure you can thank Fortnite for that. It's among certain demographics, Fortnite is just amazingly popular. To see them kind of drop this whole thing, the article points out a couple of things, including the fact that, well, the Chinese gaming company Tencent has a pretty large share in both companies. So maybe their parent company, or at least their investors, said, "Hey, you two, knock it off. This isn't good for either of us." Or maybe it has something to do with the fact that Fortnite is rolling in cash at this point, and they could possibly have paid PUBG some kind of royalty because, I think Fortnite has the money to do that kind of thing. I don't know, Cory. I guess final thoughts about this one. What is the possible resolution these two could have reached?
I mean, honestly, it's really hard to say without knowing any more about the case or the litigation or why any of it happened. In terms of the two games, PUBG kind of started off a big tide. We've seen a lot of Battle Royale games coming out between Fortnite, a lot of stuff at E3. It was Battle Royale themed. Black Ops 4 from Activision is going to have Battle Royale in it. So we had this natural inclination to dislike things that are popular. So if I ask somebody about Fortnite, there's a pretty solid chance you're going to say, I don't like Fortnite, everybody else likes it, blah, blah, blah. Same with PUBG, same with Battle Royale as a whole.
Right.
Should we let those feelings interfere or really influence how we think about ongoing litigation with companies that don't know we exist and have no interest in us whatsoever? Probably not. Is this even relevant to us? Probably not, because I don't see PUBG going anywhere. I don't see Fortnite going anywhere. I definitely don't see Fortnite going anywhere.
No. And Fortnite in particular, I mean, that was that game that, you know, we talked about, and then now I think it's at just such a high place to when we were first talking about it's a game that used to be a tower defense game, and now it's probably the most popular game out there currently. And yeah, and just for the record, if someone asks me, I do not hate Fortnite. I think Fortnite's a great game. I think PUBG is a great game as well. It's just, I don't know, PUBG players hate Fortnite because it's so popular. Fortnite people hate PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds because they think it's old or something like that. I don't know. Either way, interesting that they dropped it all together, because I thought that was going to be a much bigger, you know, kind of court case or legal battle than just, hey, we're done with this kind of now. So I'm glad that you brought it up, and I'm glad that you kind of pointed out. But like I said, that game or that article over a copyright dispute kind of led me to another one. And this one was a link I sent you. It's to a Kickstarter. I am not advocating for this Kickstarter whatsoever. I think, in fact, people should be very, very cautious of Kickstarters because so many go sideways so fast. And now we have this next one, and people seem excited about it. It's a game called Temtem. You know, it's its own kind of deal, but at the same time, it pretty explicitly states itself to be a Pokemon ripoff. And I guess my question to you is that, you know, not just about Temtem, because I'm sure, you know, you haven't had time to research it, but just video games that copy other games. Obviously through Fortnite, we see it happen and be very successful. Do you think there's any appetite that, not just for, you know, kind of spin-off games, but for at least a spin-off game of Pokemon? Because this is a massively multiplayer creature collection adventure, so essentially they're trying to be an MMO for Pokemon. Do you think there's any appetite for a kind of a knockoff of Pokemon, or do you think Pokemon itself has such presence that you can't have Pokemon without literally Pokemon?
Well, looking at this Kickstarter, they made approximately $600,000 off a $70,000 goal, so I would say yes. Yes, it is very likely that there is an appetite for knockoff Pokemon.
I see, but at the same time, making an MMO is so expensive. I don't think even $600,000 even begins to make something that people would consider a playable MMO, though.
Well, it turns out that Temtem is going to have a full-on story campaign, too. So even if the massively multiplayer aspect of it doesn't pan out, you'll still have that. Okay. Yeah, I'm not entirely familiar with the Kickstarter. I just first looked at it today, and I have to admit I generally don't follow Kickstarters. I don't really think asking for money qualifies as news. But yeah, I mean, that alone, you know, based on the concept art that I'm seeing here, I could see it working. I don't see why not. There have definitely been Pokemon clones in the past. Obviously, when Pokemon itself was big at first, we saw things like Robopon. Digimon is still big, as it turns out. Magination was big for a little while. All these things that kind of like hopped on the Pokemon train and rode along with it. We've even seen more contemporary clones. If you play World of Warcraft, you'll know that you can actually collect and battle what amounts to Pokemon in that game, which is an entirely different game in and of itself. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, no, I think the creature raising concept is a popular one. I think it doesn't necessarily have to be Pokemon to work. So, you know, good luck to them and their $600,000, I suppose. That's not enough to finish this game, by the way. Absolutely not. Don't expect that. They'll probably get a publisher.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So, yep. And I thought that one just kind of loosely tied in with the idea of, you know, PUBG and Fortnite having a copyright dispute, and then seeing this one who, honestly, maybe the Pokemon company might have something to say about this. But hey.
I mean, It's not like id can come back and sue somebody for making a first-person shooter because it's similar to Doom. I don't even think they could. They could have back in the day. So we're looking at what amounts to basically a broad genre or a concept more than anything, more than a Pokemon ripoff necessarily. If Nintendo was going to sue people for making games that were too similar to Pokemon, we would have seen, say, Monster Rancher, Bandai Namco, get sued into oblivion back in the day. I don't believe that happened.
Okay, no, and it certainly didn't. So, all right, fair enough. All right, so let's see, that Kickstarter aside, let's stop giving them free press. Let's talk about, let's see, and, a couple more articles here I really wanted to touch on. Let's see, I believe, all right, so the last one that you brought up, and this has to do with Red Dead Redemption 2, and that's such a fan favorite. I wouldn't even call it a cult classic because a cult classic implies that people don't like it or, it's only really popular among a certain amount of people. I feel like Red Dead Redemption, the first one, had a massive audience and it had great success. And, people have been craving a sequel to that.
Sure, absolutely.
So, yeah. And so this article here from PC Gamer, what's it about?
So the idea is PC Gamer spoke to the CEO of Take-Two. His name is Strauss Zelnick, and he said that it might not, or that rather that Red Dead Redemption 2 may not sell as well as Grand Theft Auto 5. And my response to this was twofold. One, Grand Theft Auto 5 is, as Zelnick says, the best-selling entertainment product of all time. We speak on Popzara, we speak to Matt Piscatella from the National Purchase Diary, the company that chronicles game sales, and they've time and time again, it's Grand Theft Auto 5 on the top 20 charts for the month after month after month after month since it came out. Do I think any game can really stand up to that? That's really hard to say. Those are some big shoes to fill. If any game has a shot at it, I would say Red Dead Redemption 2 might, because obviously it's the same company. They know what they're doing. We'll see how that goes. My second thought is that it is a Western game. People want Westerns. You don't see a lot of them these days. But do I think that might have an effect on sales? Possibly. It's a bit more of a niche genre than drive around in cars and run over hookers or whatever you do in Grand Theft Auto.
No, that you nailed it. That is what it is. But yeah, the setting is definitely like I think the closest that we kind of got to that were like a couple of Fallout games. And it's kind of like a post-apocalyptic wasteland that I think kind of still gave you that Western vibe. But no, this is, just like LA Noir, just like, a couple other, they really encompass that time period, that kind of genre. And so you think that is something it has going for it, is that it's still kind of unique as it's a Western.
Right, absolutely. And one of the things that Zelnick talks about is, you don't want to count on this game selling until it's done and it actually starts selling. You don't want to think that you're unproven concept, and a game that's not finished is an unproven concept, even if we know that Red Dead Redemption 1 did well. You don't want to count on that doing well until it actually happens. So what Zelnick is basically saying in the article is that we have to keep trying, we have to keep working at it, we can't just rest on our laurels and hope the game's going to sell the way we think it should.
So, and of course, this seems like a pretty, clear-cut case of tempering expectations because, saying that, hey, we're probably not going to be the best of the best of the best. That's like an Olympian going to, of course, the Olympics and saying, I'm going to beat Michael Phelps. And it's like, well, no one has ever before done that, and no one has, kind of risen to that level. So good luck to you. So they're saying, we're probably not going to be making the history books, but at the same time, we're going to do everything that we can to make the history books. Is that kind of the attitude he's given off here?
Right, exactly. And that's good news for those of us who are going to be buying and playing the game. I've said this a few times. Sales numbers don't really mean much to us peons on the street. But what we do like seeing here is the fact that Zelnick is saying, we're going to try to make the best game we can because we know that, if nothing else, is what will sell. And that's great. We want good games.
Right. We definitely want good games. And again, Red Dead Redemption was such a hit. I think if they have kept their creative directors, their studio, if they've kept everything, and just kind of given people more of what they liked about the first one, then it's going to be a big seller. It's going to be a big game to obviously keep an eye on. So
it's big enough that we're seeing a lot of publishers move their release dates back a little bit to kind of avoid being in the release launch, rather in the launch path of this game.
That's a great sign. I mean, heck, you could ask, the marketing people for Solo and ask about that just for movies, what it's like to release next to too big of another feature. And yeah, so obviously we're not here to talk about movies, but yeah, very, very cool. So, all right, there's that one. We have a couple more articles here. I believe I sent a couple to you. This one happened a number of days ago. Didn't mention it, but because I think it happened over the weekend. But at the same time, I'm not too familiar because I've never used something called Steam Spy. But and you mentioned that you talked to that gentleman all about numbers and sales and sales figures and things like that. Valve is the largest place to buy and sell games on the internet. Valve and Steam is kind of the place to be if you're looking for numbers. So I guess my question is to you, how important are numbers? And I know you just call yourself a peon. I think you're a little bit higher than a peon, but
I appreciate that.
But I mean, just in general, numbers for people, because people like looking at things and going, that number is bigger than that number. That makes us feel good, or that makes us feel bad. Yeah, Steam Spy is going away, and looks like Valve is trying to bring out something that they say is quote unquote more accurate and more useful than a third-party program. I mean, how is this big news, or not? Is this big news because obviously people have been talking about this, but does this matter to developers, to game players, to marketers? Who does this apply to?
Well, there are exceptions to every rule, and where I just said that when we talk about sales, it doesn't really matter to you and me in the street, there is an exception to that. And that exception is when we're talking about multiplayer games, especially small, niche-focused multiplayer games, the sort that you'll see on Steam. If you're not familiar with Steam Spy is basically a tool that let you see how much a given game had sold. It was a bit murky, you didn't really know for sure, but you can get an idea. This is relevant if you're playing games on PC, especially multiplayer-only games, because why would you purchase a multiplayer-only game that nobody else has? You'll very quickly find you have nobody to play with, you've wasted your money. So from that perspective, that's actually really interesting. I can think of one game at least that was affected by this, and that game was Lawbreakers from Bosky, which was a really big, super hyped-up release. They rode the hype train for actual years for this game, and then it launches. It flops like a dead fish. People can use Steam Spy to see that it flopped like a dead fish, which makes them not buy it, which makes it continue to flop. And Bosky itself is dead now. They tried to climb out of the hole by making a battle royale game called Radical Heights. Didn't do very well. And that's where we are with them.
I didn't even I had heard of the original game. I did not know that Radical Heights was their product, because that thing was in alpha, and they were trying to get people interested in that thing left and right. So
right. Again, I don't have any inside numbers, but Radical Heights, from my perspective, was pretty clearly an attempt to try and save themselves from the giant black hole collapse of Lawbreakers.
Yeah, and that was obviously a last-ditch effort, because again, almost no polish on Radical Heights. So that's interesting in itself. But as you were kind of mentioning, the idea that you can look at a game and see its numbers, that's something that publishers have been avoiding for a little bit. And, maybe for the reasons you gave, where if they see numbers go from from a really big number to a medium number, everyone's going to start claiming it's the death of XYZ.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and your average buyer on your PS4 or your Xbox One, I mean, they don't really care if Call of Duty, whatever Warfare, sold 10% less than last year's edition. It's not going to bother them. But if you're on Steam and they release The Witcher Battle Royale or whatever, and you see that it's only got 100 other players, then yeah, that's going to set you off a little bit. So it's understandable that some publishers, and probably a lot of indie developers, might have been a little concerned about Steam Spy. Steam Spy is now dead. You can't use it anymore. That's because of the GDPR regulations. So we all we turn around to that again. And what we're looking at with this article is the idea that Valve themselves may start releasing a tool to view sales numbers, which runs us into the same issue. If you are an indie developer who wants to make a multiplayer-focused game, especially on Steam, which is incredibly crowded. It's a giant, bustling storefront. You're going to have trouble getting seen.
Yeah.
And now people can see if your game isn't selling, which is kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. My game isn't selling, therefore my game isn't going to sell. That's probably a scary thought for a lot of indie developers out there.
Yeah, and heck, we've even seen larger developers, just off the top of my head, again, Activision Blizzard, with their World of Warcraft subscription numbers, they, every quarter they would say 12 million people were playing our game, 7 million people were playing our game. And, it was very clean data that they said this is how many people are playing our game because, they liked the numbers. It was a feather in their cap. And then we saw in the previous expansion for WoW that they stopped giving numbers because those subscription numbers dropped down to like 2.4, 2.2, 3 million people, as opposed from like 11 million that they had just months prior. So they found way more negatives than positives to release these numbers, and again, they found no positives in actually doing it. So the fact that Steam is potentially looking at a way to give you these numbers, regardless, whether or not you would like them out there, just from a consumer, I like to see numbers. I'd like to see what's selling and what isn't. Maybe not as a matter of what's good or what's bad, but just kind of curiosity. It kind of scratches that itch in the back of my brain. So we'll see what Steam actually comes out with, but personally, I think it's a good thing. I really do that Valve is considering bringing something more accurate than Steam Spy out.
Right, absolutely. Speaking of Steam, actually, you had an idea before the show started that was really interesting.
Yeah, so obviously, for those, we normally mention on the program, we're coming into it like a week late. So if you're listening to this live, I'm sure you know about it. Steam Summer Sale happens for 2 weeks in the middle of summer, and it's the thing that sucks the last remaining bucks out of your wallet because, hey, a lot of games are on sale. And, I've heard some complaints that this recent sale wasn't as good as some sales. But if you're still looking for AAA games for like 60 to 70% off, then, hey, the Steam Summer Sale is probably going to be your go-to. So I thought it'd be fun for us here on the program to not just look at the current sales, because those sales they tend to come and go as days kind of go, but rather games that we would recommend that are available through Steam that you should maybe add to your wish list, and then hey, if you see it on sale for 90% off, 70% off, 80% off, you should definitely go pick it up, and you would hey, you should definitely play it, especially if you get it for cheap. So with that being said, Cory, did you have any, let's start off with just one recommendation, why you recommend it, and what is a game that you recommend someone put on their wish list and buy if it's on sale?
Well, funny you should mention a game that's on serious discount right now, and probably one of the best games to come out in recent years, Doom. Doom is available right now for 50% off, making it $15. That is theft. That should be illegal. If you have not played Doom yet and you enjoy first-person shooters, it is an excellent game. It's very gruesome, very action-packed. It's got great music, great graphics. It is a lot of fun. If you don't have it on Switch or PS4 or Xbox or even PC yet, you should probably purchase and play Doom.
Doom, not half bad. Of course, I saw a lot of really good reviews about that. I have not played it, so hey, maybe I'll know what I'll be doing later. But yeah, Doom, not bad. One that I always have on my wish list, and I always like, kind of watching it, because even though it's a number of years old, and I'm sure lots of people have played it, it's still up for like $10, and that's criminal. But if you can find a deal for $2 or $1, get it. And it's a game called Portal and Portal 2. Usually they have a bundle pack. If not, you can just buy one and then the other. I think as far as puzzle games go, Portal and Portal 2 are, the best I've ever played. They are fun. Portal 2 especially if you have a friend and you want to play co-op with. Yeah, and I find it kind of unconscionable to pay $10 for it because it's so old. But if you could buy it for 99 cents, you will get hours of entertainment out of that 99 cents. So, Portal.
Portal's a fantastic game. Let me add in another fantastic game. In fact, I'd like to talk about the best game of last year, the single #1 highest quality electronic entertainment product to be released last year was an Ubisoft game. It was called Assassin's Creed Origins. I will hear no discussion about this. It is a fantastic title. If you see it on sale, as it is right now, for $30, you should probably buy it. It's really good. They're making another one called Assassin's Creed Odyssey that also looks really good. It's even got good DLC. It's got Egypt. It's got stabbing. Those are great things. You should try it.
Not half bad. I definitely definitely fan of Assassin's Creed. So great to see that they are available through there. Let's see. All right, so let me see if it's even on sale. But one that I really like the gameplay of, and again, kind of you're gonna get lots and lots of hours. Anything Civilization. So Civilization, if you've played the genre before. There's really not much to kind of go over, and just kind of looking through here. Sid Meier's Civilization 5, 75% off. Civ 5, I still sometimes go back and play that just because I want something different, even though it was released like 8 years ago. And I believe they have like a Civilization, even one after that. Trying to find that one. That one's probably on sale. But folks, again, I'm all about the money spent to hours spent kind of playing games, and anything Civilization that your heart could desire, I would say go with that, especially through Steam sale. So, and even beyond that, Fallout as well. Just to double up here, Civilization and Fallout. If you are tight on money but you want a lot of hours to play, anything Fallout, anything Civilization will last you a long time to come.
Absolutely will. Hey, so looks like we have enough time for one more big recommendation, and I'm gonna kind of veer off into left field for this one. So let's say you got a lot of friends, and let's say you want to play a game together, and let's say you can get everybody in the same room, or you can use Parsec, which lets you play couch co-op games online. In any of those situations where you have people who will play a game with you, you probably want to purchase and play Monster Prom. Monster Prom is fantastic. It's hilarious. You play as a monster trying to find a date for prom. It is easily one of the funniest games I've ever played in my life, by far. So even if you don't like the concept, just trust me on this one. Like I'm the senior games editor with Popzara. I'm going to throw my title around here. I assure you, you will love Monster Prom, especially at the current price, which is $10. It's typically $12. You're saving $2. That's amazing.
Yeah, that particular sale isn't as severe as some of the others, but I do remember that you had a review of Monster Prom up on Popzara not too long ago, and you gave it really, really good reviews. So actually, with that, why don't we go ahead and just kind of say Steam Summer Sale. If there's any game in particular you were looking for, it's probably on some kind of discount at the moment and for the next couple of days. Steam Summer Sale only comes around once a year. Definitely check it out. Cory, you mentioned your review on Popzara. Tell us more about what people can find if they go there, and especially of yours.
Well, most recently, I've reviewed State of Decay 2, which is a game you can get basically for free thanks to Game Pass. Game Pass is fantastic. Future reviews that are coming soon are for Shining Resonance Refrain, the new RPG from Sega. Let's see what else. The Lost Child, another RPG from NIS America. We've got Mario Tennis Aces coming. Basically, all of the shiny new stuff your heart could ever desire is going to be on Popzara.
Very, very cool, and we have a link to that in the show notes. And in the meantime, Cory, I'm going to say thank you so much, everyone. Once again, Cory Galliher, and of course, writes for Popzara and is our resident gaming correspondent. And Cory, until next time, thank you so much. I know it was soon, but a lot of great content, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. And everyone else out there, thank you for tuning in to Computer America. And let's see, so tomorrow, again, I mentioned at the beginning, but the 4th of July, we will not have a live program, and we will be back at it Thursday, 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern, and usually Monday, 4 to 5 Eastern, or Monday through Friday, 4 to 5 Eastern. Everyone, until next time, have a great day. Thank you so much.